All right, for this video, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at some plank work and some dead bug work, which is we'll work on that plank. We'll be face down, then we'll flip over, and we're going to do that dead bug. So what we're going to really do is we're going to focus on these two. Again, you can go on the internet and you're going to you'll find different opinions, different ideas, a way to do the plank, a way to do the dead bug. Been doing this for a while, and there's some things that I really like to focus in on, and the way I like to set up these guys give us a nice fundamental base of these two exercises, and then we'll go crazy with some variations in the next series or a few series of videos. But let's really work and focus on getting the setup of these two exercises and making sure we're doing what we need to do before we progress. Sometimes we kind of miss the basics and try to do all these nice fancy things that you see out on the internet, and just again doing the basics sometimes is enough, is more than sufficient. So let's look at these. The plank setup, what I like to see is elbows are directly underneath the shoulders, which is directly underneath the chest, and our hands are about shoulder width apart, pinkies on the floor, head looking right between the hands, not dropping down, not clenching fists. We get better contraction out of that abdomen actually if we get those hands shoulder width apart, pinkies pressing into the floor. We're able to really hone in and focus on that abdomen. Once we get that initial setup going, then I like to make sure we're on the tips of our toes. Then we get that full contraction out of those glutes and those adductors. Drawing those guys in really brings in that lower third of the abdomen that we sometimes tend to neglect, and really with crunches and abs, or crunches and sit-ups, which I'm trying to give you something different than crunches and sit-ups. We're going to really focus in on the finer points of that plank so we can get that maximum contraction out of that abdomen, paraspinals, erector spinae, all that stabilization of the spine. That's what we're really going for. So the basic fundamentals that I like to look at before we progress to anything is the setup of that plank. So those pinkies are on the floor, elbows underneath the shoulders, underneath the chest, head is right between the hands, looking between the hands. That way we're not looking down and drooping and dropping that head. Our cervical spine is in its neutral position, in the position it's supposed to be in. We're up on top of the toes, not driving back into those toes. That puts a lot of stress on the low back. Get up on those toes. That way we're not tripoding up, butt's not in the air. Now when we're in that position, we contract the glutes and the adductors on the inside of the legs. Right there, we draw in those. We signal that lower 1/3 of the abs to come into play. We get those erector spinae, paraspinals, a little bit of lat work back there. You get full contraction. So that's the basic setup of that plank. Really focus and work on that with the plank, and then we will go from there. You don't have to do a plank for a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes. There's nothing really in life that you need to stabilize for an entire minute to 2 minutes. When we're doing activities in life, they're typically short bursts if you're trying to get a full contraction of everything. So your snatches and your cleans and your deadlifts and things like that require you to do a plank type of contraction for that abdomen in short bursts. We're not, again, there's rarely anything that you're going to hold in position that is maximum effort needed for that extended period of time. Typically we have some movement going on, and we get some relaxation of one thing and some contraction of the others, but work on that plank, and then we'll give you variations from there. So the next thing we're going to look at is that dead bug. So the setup for the dead bug, again, we naturally have a lordotic curve in that low back. Some of us have more lordosis or a bigger curve than others have. So what we really need to focus in on is getting a neutral pelvis before we go into that dead bug. You're still going to have a little bit of lordosis. We never want to flatten the back. That's a term you hear all the time, and it's not right. Flatten the back is not the same as getting maximal contraction in that low back. So you don't want to flatten the back. You want to find neutral of the hips. And the way we do that is we get into position, we rock the hips all the way back and all the way forward. So we're rocking all the way back and all the way forward, and we want to find the midpoint of those two that gets us in pretty much neutral. Now, I still have some lordosis back here. I can actually put my hands back here. I'm not getting a full contraction of the abdomen at this point, but I can still slide my fingers underneath. You can even put 2 fingers on the front. And as we do this exercise and you tighten your abdomen, resting your fingers right there in front across those lower abs, you can feel them fully engaged. You can slide those hands underneath. You've got very little space because now you've contracted those erector spinae, paraspinals, and lats and everything that's attached to that spine back there to give you full stabilization of that spine. You can get your fingers under there, but it's hard. Again, my pelvis didn't move, so I didn't try to flatten my back to the floor by moving my pelvis. I am in neutral and I tighten. Now I have tight abdomen, tight. You can feel it everywhere. So I'm bringing my knees up. I'm now at 90 degrees of the knees, 90 degrees of the hips. Again, dead bug is why it's called, this is why it's called dead bug. You look like you've been sprayed by the pest inspector. I'm dead, on my back, arms are up. And then all we're gonna add today to this position to work on that abdominal bracing is just dropping that hand back. Tummy is tight, not letting anything move, and you're back up. You'll feel that contralateral work. So as I'm going back with that left side, you'll feel that contralateral work across the abdomen to that opposite hip. You'll feel that whole abdomen work. If you're doing it correctly, you're going to feel some contralateral work. You really feel some work in that hip to try to stabilize that side that is opposite. And then I'm just going to continue to work through that range, nice and slow and controlled. Slow, controlled movement is work. This throwing arms around is not, we're not getting much work there. You're not asking that abdomen to brace that spine quite as much. So we're really trying to get that central nervous system to fire and get maximum contraction out of that abdomen by going through that range a little bit slower. So that's all we're going to add today. And we will go from there with some variations of both the plank and that dead bug down the road. If you keep checking back the series of videos there on YouTube and this weekly email. And then we will add from that, get the fundamentals, and keep trucking, and you'll build you a nice little plan where you can work the abdomen without doing those crunches and doing those sit-ups.